Hey everybody, welcome back to the Manufacturing Stream Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Whitley. Manufacturing Stream Podcast brought to you by L2L, the number one connected workforce platform in the world. If you haven't checked out a connected workforce platform, go to L2L.com, check us out. We're doing some really amazing things with AI, really amazing things with your ability to pull data out and push them to your BI platforms. Just some cool stuff. So go check that out. And like I said, L2L.com. Go follow us on LinkedIn as well. And you can follow me on LinkedIn under Eric Whitley. We are constantly posting content for you to go take a look at and learn from. And so good stuff. I had a thought process the other day about, I really would like to get some insight from people who are leaving manufacturing and people who are choosing not to stay in manufacturing. And I thought, who do I know that I could grab that would actually be able to give me some straight insight as to why they left manufacturing? And then it dawned on me that there's this guy who has the same name as I do, who I've known for, ever since he came out of his mother's womb. So I decided to bring my son on today because Brandon is one of those people who has decided that manufacturing wasn't where he wanted to stick around. He's got a long background in manufacturing. We'll talk about that. But he left manufacturing, and I want to know why. Why are people leaving manufacturing? Why are people with good backgrounds, good information, good knowledge about manufacturing, about lean manufacturing, and we'll talk about Brandon's background in that. Why are they deciding to walk out of manufacturing? So I thought I'd go right to the horse's mouth. I thought I'd bring my son on today. So let me introduce you, Brandon Whitley. Hey, buddy. Welcome.
Thanks.
Yeah. Brandon is, he's not a big talker like I am, so I'm going to have to pull some stuff out of him here today. So, so what's happening? You doing all right?
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
You're good. Kids good. Everybody's good.
Everyone is good. Yeah.
Right. Good. So let's start off, give everybody a little bit of a background here. So, Brandon grew up in our household. I've been a manufacturing consultant pretty much all of my career. I've been in manufacturing ever since he was a toddler. So, so manufacturing has been part of your life pretty much all of your life, right?
Yeah. I think without knowing it, honestly, that I didn't have any intention to get into it, and it just kind of happened. And then it got to where I, started working, and I knew more stuff than other people because I had kind of been around it my whole life, and it just kind of morphed into something.
Right, right. So tell us a little bit about how you got started. How did you get started in manufacturing? Like, what was your first manufacturing job?
So, pretty soon after high school, started at Smith Optics, building goggles and stuff like that. Actually, my first day was as the janitor in production.
Right.
And I made it about 6 hours before the production manager was like, "I don't think you're in the right spot. Do you want to build goggles?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd probably prefer that over taking out garbages and stuff like that." And so, just moved into production and assembling goggles and sunglasses. And I was the young guy. It was a job. I didn't go into it for any reason. It was a way to make money, and that's kind of how I started there.
Right. Right. And then when you kind of, how long were you on the production line per se?
I think so. About 2 years I was doing production, and then I got promoted to a lead over the area that I was doing production in. And so I ended up being a lead over probably 10 people, and it was just assembly. It wasn't anything fascinating. I moved to swing shift so that I could be a lead. So went from being a single guy to being married and having a kid, and then moved to a swing shift. And so it was a sacrifice to do that. But it was at that point of, well, if I'm going to be here, I might as well try to move up. And so I moved into that role.
Right. Right. And you were in, correct me if I'm wrong, but were you in sublimation at that time? Is that
Yeah,
where you were?
sublimation.
So tell us a little bit
Sublimating.
about that process. What was that process like?
Yeah, so that was the actual designs of the goggle straps. So printing the designs on, and that's what I did all day, every day was heat press goggle straps, thousands a day for 2 years.
Right. Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
All right. So you get done. You're a lead on the production line. What's your next move here now? What?
So at that point, so back then it was very much a production was we are going to build goggles as fast as we can, no matter how we can. And the best way we know how is to stick thousands in front of you and just let you go. And, that's kind of when I was like, there's probably better ways to do this. Like it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I was seeing, I would print 100 goggle straps and then I'd see them 3 weeks later sitting there and no one had touched them. Yet I was told that I needed to hurry and do these ones right now because they needed to go down the line immediately. Yet 3 weeks worth of my work was sitting there and turns out we didn't need it. And so it started to kind of click of like, there's probably better ways to do this. And so I just started attempting to do small improvements, and it was very much against the grain of everyone there. Everyone there had been there forever, and they had their way of doing things. And so I kind of slowly was like, well, maybe if I 5S this area and just basic continuous improvement stuff that was foreign to 95% of the people there. I started doing that, and then we ended up getting a manager that came in with a very big continuous improvement background, and he came in, and I stuck out immediately to him. I was the one doing something, and he wanted to restructure, and he put out this org chart of how he was going to structure the leads, and my name wasn't on the lead org chart, and I was like, oh, I don't know what that means. And he's like, do you see this CIS down here at the bottom? That's the continuous improvement specialist. So I'm pulling you out. I don't want you to be a lead anymore. You're wasting your time. And I want you to do continuous improvement. And so that was kind of the first really jolt into a career that I actually had,
Yeah. And so that was kind of cool in our relationship, right? Because that was a moment where you and I could start talking about kind of the same thing. I was off doing that consulting, and then now you started to do that from a job standpoint, right?
Right.
Tell me a little bit about what kind of learning and training did you go through after that?
It was not it wasn't anything formal. It was on the job training, and he kind of took me under his wing of like, every week I would go in his office for 2 hours and he would walk me through all of his stuff that he'd worked on through his career. And it was pretty basic stuff. And it was a lot of going and learning, going to different plants and seeing what they do. And then it was kind of just trial by fire. It was, we're going to start with basic things and teach the leads how to do that. And we're just going to grow this thing and it was slow, but it was getting buy-in from everyone in the entire business, really.
Talk a little bit about how are you feeling at this point in time with like your career or like moving forward, or were you enjoying doing that? I mean, did that give you purpose and kind of, how are you feeling during, as from a work standpoint?
That was probably the funnest period that I've had working in my life. Just from a standpoint of being able to watch change, and real change, not just like incremental small things, but watch the actual like morphing of an entire plant around a certain thing, So yeah, it was definitely like you felt not just valued in yourself, but that you were actually contributing value. We started charting out all the processes and actually watching us knock off days of production in real time, seeing it and being able to know that you were actually having an effect. And, we would have companies come in from like our parent company was in Italy, and they would send people to the United States to see our continuous improvement. And and to actually have that happen was pretty cool to watch and be part of.
Very good. Cool. All right. So you're doing this continuous improvement thing. You're getting noticed at work. Where does going back to school fit in?
It kind of came in at a couple of years later, as the continuous improvement movement started to get bigger, and kind of seeing that I was limited to where I was going to go at that point. I was the grassroots of continuous improvement, and I was on the shop floor, but seeing what they wanted to turn it into. And then seeing people that were in those type of positions, I didn't quite fit that. I was, 23, 24 years old, and I had a year of schooling and no formal training and was self-taught. And so I was in a company that salary-wise was not competitive with really anyone else. It was a great job I was in at that time, but seeing where I wanted to go, it felt like a necessity at that point.
Mm-hmm. Right. So just a little context for everybody listening. So, and I can give this context because I'm the dad here, but Brandon went off to college, kind of came back from college, was kind of wandering around a little bit, not really sure what he wanted to do. Ended up getting married pretty early, had a kid, and had a couple of kids at this point in time, adopted my oldest grandson, and then had another child. And so then you went back to get your degree then, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And what'd you get your degree in?
Business administration.
Yeah. So you went to Utah State, got your degree in business administration. All right. So now you got this degree in hand. Now what are you going to do with this thing? What did you do at that point in time?
At that point, it was kind of I wanted to have the conversations with where I was of, what are my options here at this point and where can I move to?
Right.
And then, if it came down to it, looking at other manufacturing jobs around the state that maybe had a better pay, at that point. But I did have the opportunity to stay at Smith and move into production manager role, and do that for a while, because of my degree. Honestly, I was told that it wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for that. So,
Right. Right. And this is and this is really kind of the crux of the podcast today. This is really what I want to talk about, is because I want everybody to take what we've just talked about over the last 10 minutes and ingest the thought process of, we've brought somebody into manufacturing. We've brought them through this process. We've got them excited about manufacturing. We've got them excited about continuous improvement and watching things get better and all that, to the point that they see some upward movement here in manufacturing. And so Brandon's story is not the only one out there. I guarantee there's a million of these stories. And so in that, then they go back to school and get their degrees so that they can become a manager and become production manager and ops managers and stuff like that. So you get to this point, Brandon, and you realize that you've got to go someplace else to make more money, right? You need to support your family. What you've learned at this point in time, the company you're at is not providing you the balance of work-life balance. You like what you're doing, but you're not making enough money, right?
Yep.
So you decide to move on, and for the sake of just kind of, we're going to say you decided to move on to go build rockets is what you decided to do, right? You went to go work for a defense contractor, and now you've moved to that next level. So tell us a little bit about that next level. What was that decision process that you went through to say, hey, I've got to leave the home base here and move on to bigger and better things?
It was a money issue, and honestly, it was kind of just applying to jobs that I thought might be interesting. And honestly, I was looking at it as if I can use this as leverage to make a little more money and stay here where I'm comfortable, I'm willing to do that, right?
Right.
And I went out and I applied for this job and I interviewed 3 times for it and got the offer, and it was double my salary. And at that point, it was I was told kind of, thanks, but we can't match anywhere close to that. And so, as having a family, I had to
A
take that
no-brainer,
at that
right?
point. Yeah. And it was a nervous feeling for me, but offset by making a lot more money.
Right.
Um, but it was a completely different experience.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about that experience. You went from this high-paced thousands and thousands of products a day to what?
So, probably one finished product every 3 months. And, I went from as the production manager at Smith, I had 117 direct employees. And at this new spot, I had 17.
Right.
And it was all guys that were 30 years older than I was and had been doing this their whole life. And, they knew what they were doing. And it was a very hard thing for me to walk in and try to tell them, I think you should do something different. It was, at Smith, it was very cool to be able to make a change and within 1 hour have data of
Mm,
whether that change was good or
mm,
not.
mm.
And so the quickness that we could make change was such a stark difference between the new spot, because at this new one, it was, you would do this process maybe 6 times a year.
Mm.
And so when you're like, let's make this change, you would say, okay, let's change the documentation, everything, all the work instructions. And now in 2 months, when we do this again, we'll see how it does.
Mm.
And it just really slowed everything down for me.
What'd that do for you enthusiasm wise?
It killed it. Yeah, it was difficult to, first off, it was very difficult to make a change.
Mm.
We spent a month and a half looking for permission to put a TV inside of one of our rooms. And they had to do all these tests to make sure that that TV was not going to cause problems. And this was so we could put work instructions on the wall. And it sucks the life out of you a little bit of, you know, going from, we're going to try to make this change, and in an hour, we're going to know whether it worked, to, we want you to make this change, but we're not sure we're able to, so we're going to wait. And then hopefully next year it goes through type thing. And
Yeah, so this is kind of this is what I want to talk about, is these moments where we have people in manufacturing, and it doesn't have to be someplace where we're in a defense contractor or in a slow. It can be any place where people fight change or fight, make things difficult to happen, make things difficult to get better. People lose their enthusiasm to come to work, right?
yep. Yeah. And I don't think it takes much to stomp out that enthusiasm. I think if you have an employee, and this was kind of when we were at Smith, it was, if an employee says, hey, I think this garbage can is better suited there, you move the garbage can. And
Right.
and you let that employee see that they were able to make a change, and then decide if it didn't make sense or not. I think that there's a lot of places where you're told, no, you can't move that garbage can.
Yeah.
And at that point, if I'm told that I can't move that garbage can, then what can I do? You know what I mean? And so I think that there's a lot of barriers that get put up by people that really don't need to be there. And if you're open to change, shouldn't be put there.
So, yeah, so you're dealing with all this stuff, right? And again, I'm using Brandon as just a general thought process of a worker. You're dealing with all this stuff at work. You're not allowed to make change. Um, people don't want to recognize that you've got better ideas. You've got good ideas that can help. Tell me about the decision then. When did you decide I'm done with all this stuff?
It was pretty early on, honestly. I applied for new jobs not long after I started at this other place. More looking to get back into a way that I could actually make change without getting pushback. But I had my own company that I had started, and so it was getting to the point where it could do its own thing and support me and my family. And so it was more of a waiting until that opportunity was there. It was not long after I started that it was, this probably doesn't feel right for me and what motivates me to continue working. I don't like being a manager that comes in and my job is to, just do the paperwork and be quiet and get through the day. It didn't bring out much. And most of the people that were in that job, that it was just, they they got paid good. And so it was, you just got through the day. And, I think at these other smaller companies where maybe the salaries aren't great, I think you can, with a culture, have people stay because
Mm.
that culture's there. But if you stamp out that culture and don't pay,
Mm.
all of a sudden what is the purpose?
Mhm.
There's not a purpose.
Well, I think it's important too to understand that, like, you were not in that job very long before you started thinking of exiting, right?
Mm.
So when you bring on a new employee, how important is it that you actually get them bought into the system and to the process and make them feel important? You can't wait around because people are going to move, right?
Right. Especially, in the interview process for that, I was told, we want you, we're hiring you for continuous improvement. We want you to come make change, and this needs a full overhaul. And then within a month, it was, that's just, it feels like words. It didn't there,
Mhm.
because what you've asked me to do, you're not allowing me to do. And,
Mm.
and so it just became kind of, bogged down at that point.
Right. So you left manufacturing. You all of that work that you did, all of that learning that you got, all of, you put yourself through school with kids, went and got your degree, all of that work, all of that stuff to get a promotion to become, production manager, move to a bigger company, all of that, you decided now I'm moving on to different things.
Yep. Yep. It doesn't, there, it, I not saying that I would never go back to something like that. I probably would.
Right.
But at that point, it was not what best suited me.
Right. Right. And like I said, I don't think your story is unique. Your story is very. As a matter of fact, I've been doing presentations lately, and part of the things that manufacturers are facing is that just what we described here is that when people get the knowledge, the internal workings of a company, don't allow those people to continue down the road of creativity, of growth, of to make a decent living. And so people just leave. They just decide to go someplace else. I think the other thing too is that when you get somebody like you in your position, that person is a driver, is somebody who's going to step out in front. So squashing their enthusiasm, they're not going to just stick around. They're going to go someplace else, right?
Yep. The other thing too is I think that, you see when you get employees that are home run hitters, like they are the ones that are going to make a big change. If you don't have the structure in place to move
Mm,
them through, you
mm,
lose them so fast because you, and it, we would always see it as I was production manager of, like, you would see a person and say, they're going to be gone here soon because we don't have the structure now to
mm,
put them in a position that is going to advance them. And they know their worth at this point because we've helped, like, foster that a little bit and
mm,
tell them, So for instance, when I was in continuous improvement, we had a class that each area in the plant could put one person from their line in, and it was a leadership class, and the whole goal was to create leaders out of this class. And the lead of the area would find people that showed continuous improvement and the attitude and everything. And there were not enough places to put those people. And so at that point, they were like, well, maybe I am better than putting goggles together at this point. And they would go find somewhere else that could pay them double what they were making.
Right.
And it feels great to put someone in that position, right?
Yeah.
But when it's in your organization, it really is, it's a bummer to see them leave after you've helped create that person, right? And a lot of that was when you didn't have the buy-in from the director level or the VP level that was helping you, create these jobs for people that were indirect workers, right? But were driving so much change in the organization. It just became, those people were open to leaving very quick.
Yeah. Good insight, man. This is exactly what I wanted to cover today in the podcast, because it is such a big deal in manufacturing right now that you cannot find workers. You can't get skilled workers up to speed as fast as you want. And once you do, then they have knowledge and will travel type of thought process. They're gonna move on to the bigger and better things. If you don't have, like you said, if you don't have that structure and that infrastructure in place to keep them around. And so this is exactly what I want to talk about. Just kind of get it right from the horse's mouth a little bit, and people should kind of take heed of the things that you said about, just having those things in place in order to keep people. From our standpoint, from L2L standpoint, we believe that the technology helps with that, because as people come in, they're not going to want to use old technology. They're going to want to use new technology, right?
Yep.
And they're going to, did you see any of that? And when you moved on, and we're being very careful about where we actually name where this place was, but did you see, in comparison to some of the other companies that are doing the same thing that was doing, did you see a difference in technology and attitude and all of that you thought, wow, this is kind of really a dinosaur type of thought process?
Oh yeah, it was a complete, you could tell things had been the same for a very, very long time, but the unwillingness there were just so many levels of red tape that had to be broken through in order to get something through that it, the whole TV, trying to move it into a room was literally to put a PowerPoint up of instructions.
How to do your job better, huh? Yeah.
And it was just like pulling teeth to get that approved. It wasn't even anything crazy. It was just, hey, we have a sheet, but I don't want it on a piece of paper. I want it on a screen. And it was very hard to move through. So yeah, it was definitely archaic at that point.
Inefficiency, old processes, the old guard sucks the life out of new employees.
Yep.
Is that a good statement?
Yeah. And you would see, it was interesting because there would be certain areas in the business that had life. And it was because they had someone from outside was a higher up who had hired someone from outside, or someone younger, or not even younger, just someone with fresh blood. And so you would see a certain value stream. It was like, they're different.
They're getting it. They understand it.
And it was just that movement of, they were open to failing in order to move forward. And, and there is in that industry of, you can't fail. Like,
right.
You're right. You can't, we could build a goggle bad and we were okay. But in this other one,
yeah, that's true.
You couldn't fail. And so it was difficult. And so there was an understanding of, there needed to be pushback, but at the same time, where that pushback came maybe could have been a little bit different to move things.
And it has an effect. It has an effect on employees, no doubt about it.
Yep.
All right, buddy. Well, I appreciate you joining me. Thanks I know you're busy. I know you got a lot of things going on. Where can people get a hold of you if they want to get a hold of you and talk to you more about this and kind of get some insight? Where can they get a hold of you?
I don't know. I don't have anything cool. I have my business, Hunter's Hall, but other than that, I am not a social butterfly. So there's not a whole lot of spots.
Yeah, you can go to his business, huntershall.com, and get a hold of him that way. I know that already with Inside L2L, we've talked to some folks. They want to do a blog article on our discussion today. We think that this is important enough of a message to get out, so we'll be doing that. So look for a blog coming with Brandon in it here pretty soon. But yeah, thanks for joining me. I like the old school Angels hat you got going on there.
It's killer.
Yeah. We've done a lot of sports here lately, so and have plans this weekend to do that. But thanks for joining me today, buddy. I appreciate it.
Yep, no problem.
All right, everybody. Hey, if you like this podcast, please go hit like and subscribe. If you're watching this on YouTube, go follow us on all of the podcast platforms. If you're listening in your car driving down the road now, or you're at home with your headphones on, please go follow the Manufacturing Stream podcast on whatever platform you're listening on. So again, Manufacturing Stream podcast brought to you by L2L. I'm Eric Whitley, Director of Industrial Transformation at L2L, and looking forward to seeing you next time. Thanks, everybody. See ya.